The principle of not forcing. This video is about that, and perhaps one of the most eloquent anecdotes put forth by Taoist philosopher and super eloquent speaker was philosopher Alan Watts. And the Tao, or the Taoist philosophy, essentially can be synonymous with the idea of flow, or the concept of following the path or the course of nature. However, there was a misconception that a lot of people who read Taoist philosophy had with the principle of not forcing. They related it to the actual state of inaction. And Mr. Watts always sought to clarify that it does not mean inaction, and it did not mean that the Taoist or the Taoist philosophy highlights inactivity or passivity as a virtue. So that was not the case, and that's what he wanted to clarify, and he always did so in these talks. The way, as it were, if you want to put it that way, is not and never was about inaction, but rather action at the right moment and in accordance with the pattern of the world as it exists. So, for example, why would you row in a boat when you could use that same water and sail? Or if you had to cut wood in order to build a house, then you go and cut the wood. You commit to that action, but you wouldn't cut against the grain of the wood. You would go with the grain of the wood. This code can apply to all things. So as you can tell, it's not about inaction. It's about the action at the right moment and going with what is available to you and in the pattern that it exists, not fighting against the pattern. So again, analogy would be something like, if you were to fly a kite, you would go to where the wind is present. You wouldn't go to an area where there is no wind and try to throw the kite in the air and it lamely falls to the floor. That would be, one, inefficient, and two, a little absurd. So this code obviously can apply to all things in movement. So if you're a workout junkie, if you're into kettlebells, if you're into bodyweight exercise, it can definitely apply to that. However, it almost fits perfectly like a lock and key when it comes to the practice of yoga. Because primarily yoga asks the question, and the question it tends to ask of someone is, what would happen if you were to come into alignment physically, mentally, emotionally, and even spiritually? And spiritually can be anything that you find profound. So, for example, myself, I find just consciousness itself profound, whereas someone else might find nature profound, someone else might find the breath to be profound. So there are different ways of looking at that, but again, going with the waves rather than fighting against the waves. And this isn't to say that you're looking for the easiest way to do something. It's not about that. It's that you're looking for the most harmonious and balanced way to do something. So if the goal is to get to the top of the cliff, then why would you put on a backpack full of rocks? Or why would you stop every 2 steps to look down to see how far you've come? That's not the goal. The goal is to get to the top of the cliff. This is also analogous to somebody who works out, and we'll paint the picture or draw an analogy to a gardener. So if your best friend planted a seed, an apple seed, I guess, or a seed that requires sprouting out of the ground, a mango tree, a mango seed. So if your friend planted a mango seed and started therefore or thereafter to yell at the sun to shine brighter and started to slap at the soil, to make more nutrients go into the seed, you would probably have a chat with them. It is the same concept when it comes to your movement practice, whether it be for functionality or for flexibility or mobility. The moment you start to diminish yourself in order to get faster, better, or stronger, it is just as futile to yell at the sun or slap at the soil. So what can you do? So what you can do is create the correct and optimal conditions for you to thrive, just like the same thing with the planting of the seed, you're not going to dig it up every 3 seconds. You're not going to stop at the soil. You're going to make sure you water it, make sure the soil is nutrient dense, make sure it gets enough sunlight. Maybe you'll have a reflector and you'll stand off to the side to make sure that the soil is taken care of. So you can pay attention to the correct conditions. And for movement, it typically means paying attention to your thoughts, your actions, and your attitude. All of that will more than likely contribute to the results you're seeking rather than yelling at yourself and telling yourself you're not good enough. There you have it. The principle of not forcing, not synonymous with inactivity. It's actually synonymous with activity, but activity and action at the right moment and in accordance with the world and your environment. Peace.